I never thought a simple Saturday afternoon in Austin, Texas would bring back so many forgotten memories, let alone teach me something so beautiful about family. My name is Rachel Carter. I'm 35 years old, and for most of my adult life I've been so busy with work, paying bills, and keeping up with responsibilities that I had almost forgotten what it meant to be a child. But one unexpected moment, triggered by a dusty old toy box in my attic and a curious little boy, brought back colors into my life that I didn't even realize had faded. It started when my sister, Emily, asked me to watch her 8-year-old son, Daniel, for the weekend. She had an out-of-town work conference in Dallas, and since I live alone in a quiet neighborhood, I was the perfect babysitting choice. Daniel and I had always shared a special bond. He was curious, thoughtful, and sometimes far too serious for his age. I saw in him a reflection of myself when I was his age, always asking questions, always wanting to understand the world, yet sometimes missing out on the simple joys of childhood. Saturday morning began as any other. We had pancakes, played board games, and took a walk around the park. But after lunch, Daniel grew restless. Kids these days are so used to screens and digital games that the idea of being entertained without a tablet or console sometimes feels impossible. I tried suggesting a movie, but he shook his head. I suggested building a puzzle, but he frowned. "Aunt Rachel," he finally said, "don't you have anything fun here? Like something from when you were a kid?" That question stopped me in my tracks. Something from when I was a kid? It had been years since I thought about that part of my life. But then I remembered the attic. Somewhere up there, hidden behind boxes of old clothes and holiday decorations, was the wooden toy chest that had once been my treasure trove. "Actually," I said with a smile, "I might." We climbed the narrow attic stairs, Daniel following close behind me with excitement sparking in his eyes. The attic smelled faintly of cedarwood and dust, the kind of scent that instantly reminded me of forgotten summers. And there it was, tucked under a pile of blankets, the chest. My childhood chest. The one my dad built for me when I was 6. With Daniel's help, we dragged it into the light. The brass latch was a little rusty, but when I flipped it open, a rush of nostalgia filled my heart. Inside were dolls with frayed dresses, coloring books with half-finished pages, a jump rope, and then, right at the bottom, the one thing that nearly made me cry, my old teddy bear, Mr. Buttons. He was worn out, one ear slightly torn and a button eye missing, but to me, he looked perfect. I picked him up gently, brushing off the dust, and for a second, I wasn't 35 anymore. I was 6 years old again, hugging Mr. Buttons tightly after a scary dream. Daniel watched me carefully. "Is that your favorite toy?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered, smiling at the memory. Mr. Buttons went everywhere with me. He was my best friend when I was your age. I thought Daniel would laugh. Kids often find their parents' or relatives' old toys silly. But instead, he sat down next to me wide-eyed. "Can I hold him?" I hesitated for just a second, then nodded. Of course. Daniel held Mr. Buttons as if he were holding something sacred. Then, in the most innocent way, he asked, "Why did you stop playing with him?" That question went deeper than I expected. Why did I stop? Was it because I grew up, or because somewhere along the way I decided that being an adult meant letting go of things that brought me joy? I didn't have an answer that made sense. Instead, I said, "I guess I thought I was too old." Daniel frowned. "That doesn't sound fair. He looks like he still wants to be played with." The truth in his words hit me hard. Children see things so simply, so purely. No complications, no unnecessary rules. Just honesty. So, for the first time in decades, I hugged Mr. Buttons again. Daniel's face lit up, and before long, we weren't just sitting in the attic. We were having a full-blown pretend adventure. Mr. Buttons became the captain of a pirate ship. Daniel's toy dinosaur, which he had brought in his backpack, became the lookout, and together we sailed across imaginary seas. For hours, we laughed, we played, and I felt a joy I hadn't felt in years. Somewhere in the middle of our game, I realized that Daniel wasn't just discovering my childhood, he was giving it back to me. Later that evening, after dinner, Daniel surprised me again. He had tucked Mr. Buttons beside his pillow and whispered, "I'll keep him safe tonight, Aunt Rachel. He won't be lonely anymore." That night, I lay awake thinking about everything. About how life rushes us into adulthood, about how we trade imagination for deadlines, and how sometimes it takes a child to remind us of what truly matters. The next morning, Daniel ran into the living room holding Mr. Buttons. "Can we play again?" he asked eagerly. And we did. We built a blanket fort, turned the living room into a castle, and filled the house with laughter. For that entire weekend, screens and gadgets were forgotten. It was just us, the teddy bear, and an endless world of stories. When Emily returned Sunday evening, she was stunned. "What did you do to him?" she laughed. "He hasn't stopped talking about Mr. Buttons since I called earlier." I smiled. "We just played." But deep down, I knew it was so much more than just play. Daniel hugged me tight before leaving. "Don't forget, Aunt Rachel," he said seriously, "you're never too old to play." That sentence stayed with me. Long after the weekend ended, long after Daniel went back to his routine, I kept Mr. Buttons by my bedside. Not because I needed him the way I did when I was 6, but because he was a reminder. A reminder of childhood, of joy, of simplicity, and of the bond one shared with my nephew. Weeks later, I even brought Mr. Buttons to work as a quiet joke. My colleagues laughed, but many of them admitted it reminded them of their own forgotten toys. A few even went home that evening and dug out their old childhood treasures. It amazed me how one small teddy bear, dusty and forgotten, could create such ripples of connection, not just between me and Daniel, but in our family and even among my friends. Life is often about moving forward, but sometimes the most beautiful moments happen when we take a step back. And thanks to Daniel, I learned that lesson all over again.